G'day folks. Well, it's time for part 3 of the 253 autopsy. It's time to get into the bottom end. I've removed most of the sump bolts and everything, except for one which I managed to strip, but I should be able to just wrench this thing around enough to get it free and break that bolt out. The sump's not really worth keeping. It's got some... It's not too badly gouged, but these things are a dime a dozen and you can get brand new ones off eBay, so might as well throw it in the bin. It was originally a blue motor sump by the looks of it. Evidently this is a rebuilt engine. It's been bored out pretty far, and as I mentioned in my last video's description, they might have used a 308 head gasket because they bored it out so far they couldn't use a 253 one. So yeah, a bit of performance and power loss there, not to mention the carbon build-up in that little gap between the head gasket and the cylinder wall. So yeah, let's strip it down and have a bit of a closer look. I've also just done an oil change on the Yanmar while I was draining this thing, so the Yanmar will be ready for a run once I get some oil plumbed into the hydraulic pump and blank off this hydraulic pump drive. So that'll all be in a separate video. Not a bad engine overall. Still got to take the rocker cover off and do some valve lash adjustments, but apart from that she should run quite well. Damn rain, always making things wet. Okay, sump's off. I've already started unbolting the oil pickup, and I think I might just bolt the starter motor back on just to spin it over for you. Be a bit of an interesting demonstration. You can see sort of why the oil pump's been eating chunks of debris. This engine's had a long time water leak getting into it. But yeah, I've unbolted one of these bolts here, which is one of the main bearing caps, and I've also loosened these two off, which are the oil pickups which feed into the oil pump with bolts on there. Pretty straightforward. And this thing here is just a pickup screen. It's clear, but it's clearly got milky oil, water contaminated oil stuck on it, and the bottom of the sump's not much better. Not a bad thing to have floating around, but very nasty and dirty. Either way, that they're all stamped by the looks of it. 5, and it's got some hammered blow marks on it. Unmarked. It's got 5 little stamps on it. Unmarked. It's got 5 stamped on it. There's a few 5s and a few other mismatched rods. I'm guessing this is sort of a parts bin engine. 7, or Z, sorry. They're all stamped the same by the looks of it. Z, 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 and Z. But the con rods are all completely different by the looks of things. Yeah, typical of a rebuild shop engine like this. Like RPM or HPM engines. They'll just throw together whatever they've got on hand. Still fairly tight, but that's probably because of all the corrosion and crap in the galleries and in the piston bores. Okay, I've got the starter motor back on and a decent battery, so let's see what happens. There we go. The drive plate's a bit buckled because I had to grab the torque converter and yank it to break the last bolt free. It's not even disengaging. It's stuck. Oh. Doesn't really matter. It's all junk, apart from the starter. I think Brad wants the starter motor because these are worth about $400 brand new. Still cold. It'd take a bit to kill a starter like this one. Plenty of amps left in the battery too. Take a bit to fry a battery like this one, even though it's an old wrecker's battery. I only paid $2 for it because I bought it for scrap metal. Needs a good charge. These bearings are fairly worn. Getting bad, especially with no oil pressure. Yeah, down to copper. Now, where did I put the other socket? Yeah, main crank bearing is definitely pretty well worn out. And down to copper in some places. Very scored and scratched. I'd say the oil filter was going into bypass as well. Look at the front main. Yeah. You can see it's signs of it starting to pick up. That little blotchy spot there. It's starting to pick up material onto the bearing journal. It's the rear main like. Yeah, rear main's pretty bad too. It's starting to deposit material on the crankshaft. It's not quite down to copper, but you can see that big dark patch there. It's starting to tear material off the bearing surface. Well, I guess I better get these conrod ends undone as well. You knock the pistons out, drop the crank out, and just get rid of this old thing. It's taking up too much space. I've got to work on the diesel next. Diesel's so much more fun than these. Can't pull the crank out with the pistons on it, they won't make it past the rest of the block. Alright, let's see what the big ends look like. Now I've got all the nuts off. Assuming I can get them off. Still a bit of white metal left there. Lots of scoring from material getting in there. Nice big scores in the crankshaft journals. The thing is, some of these aren't going to go easy. Yeah, not too bad. Get that bearing shell out. I don't recommend doing it like this if you want to keep the engine. I'm being fairly destructive with this disassembly. Come on, get out there, you bastard. Yeah, they're worn and scored, but they're not down to copper. Again, it's worn, but not down to copper yet. Mind you, the piston end is a lot worse. That's definitely down to copper. Because remember, the piston's pushing on the crankshaft more than it's actually pulling on it, if at all. Yeah, so that one's down to copper. And so's that one. Actually looks scored, like badly. Oops, it's stuck now. These other con rods are going to be a pain because they're jamming it up now that they're loose. Bit of rust staining and water damage there. Very worn. Oh yeah, definitely getting down to copper and even steel. There we go. Another main one free. Also down to copper. Get off. There we go. Not quite down to the copper backing, but it's gone from white to grey, so it's definitely worn. And the crankshaft should just yank itself out here now. There we go. One-handed crank removal. There you go. That's how you take a 253 crank out with one hand. But you can definitely see these rod ends, big con rod bearings are rather largely worn. That one's definitely badly scored and wearing very unevenly. I guess the next step is to stand the block on its end and knock each of the pistons out and just see what it's like. Because the piston and rings ain't going to be very happy. I'll be betting there's a lot of stuck rings or seized in the piston itself. Alright, let's finish this thing off and get it into the scrap bin. Let's see what the pistons are like. A lot of scoring on the crown. Most of the problems from rust and more water getting into the cylinders and being cooked, heavily glazed and nasty from being cooked, probably many times. Now the pistons are made by ACL, so they're definitely oversized replacements. Definitely not worth really keeping as such. I don't know how many people do this sort of thing. At least with a 253 anyway. 308's worth it, but the 253 generally isn't. Get out. It's a bit of a step on those bores, especially with that much carbon and crap built up on them. Yeah, the pistons themselves aren't too bad, but the bores and everything are very bad. That ring's, well, it's not stuck, but you can see there's been a lot of scoring from rust and crap built up in there. .42 ACL. Pretty sure these are almost 0.4 inches over. They're pretty oversized. Definitely a lot of scoring on that one. Nasty. But yeah, it's mainly the rust and everything that's eaten them. It's had coolant getting into the cylinders for quite some time. Well, the ring gap itself ain't too bad. This is just off any random piston, and yeah, it's within tolerance really. I've seen worse, but I think the main problem is all the corrosion and pitting, particularly around the top. She's had a pretty hard life. There's some nasty pitting and other problems with this cylinder block. But yeah, bit of a shame, but these engines really aren't worth the effort, to be honest. I mean, the pistons themselves might be worth salvaging to somebody, but I can't justify it. They're scored and quite nasty, so they can go in the bin. Whole engine only cost me $50, and if Brad gets a good starter motor and someone gets a good pair of rocker covers out of it, who cares? The rest of it can go in the bin. Anywho, that's about the end of that one, and thanks for watching. We'll do a more worthwhile thing like fix up this diesel engine. I've got a few little bits and pieces to make for it and fit off, and yeah. Oh, that's about all for this one. Thanks for watching.